My name is Sadie Monroe. I'm 35 years old. I found out my ex-husband was building a new family on top of my ashes because someone sent me a photograph of two empty chairs with my children's names on them. The message came in at 6:14 on a Saturday evening, just as the macaroni on the stove began to boil over, and my son was outside on the porch, yelling that he'd found a crab the size of a dinner plate. I remember every second of it, because that was the moment the air in my life changed. At the time, I was living in Wilmington, North Carolina, in a narrow beige duplex with bad plumbing and a yard too small for the kind of childhood I wanted my kids to have. I worked as a respiratory therapist at Cape Fear Memorial, mostly night shifts, mostly lungs that had given up after years of cigarettes, chemotherapy, bad luck, or all three. It was the kind of job that made you excellent in a crisis and terrible at small talk. I had two children. June was 10, all sharp eyes and quiet observation. The kind of child who noticed when adults changed perfume or lied with the corners of their mouths. Micah was 7 and still soft in the places life hadn't gotten to yet. He loved boats, grilled cheese, and any adult who got down to one knee to talk to him like he mattered. Their father, Owen Whitaker, had primary custody. Even now, writing that still catches in my throat. When people hear primary custody, they think there must have been some big, obvious reason. Drugs, violence, abandonment, something with a police report and a cautionary tale attached to it. But most women lose pieces of their children in quieter ways. In conference rooms, in courtroom language, in the exhausted months after a marriage dies, when you're still trying to function and somebody with more money and calmer parents explains your pain as instability. 3 years before that Saturday, my younger brother Eli had drowned off Masonboro Inlet after his boat flipped in a storm. 6 months later, my marriage cracked open. I wasn't sleeping. I was having panic attacks in grocery store parking lots. I kept showing up to life, but just barely. Owen's family noticed. More importantly, they documented. By the time the divorce was final, I was the woman who worked nights, cried in church bathrooms, and lived 25 minutes too far from the school district to make a judge feel comfortable. Owen was the stable one. Owen was the one with the brick house and the family name, and a mother who brought homemade pound cake to hearings like she was attending a fundraiser. So I got every other weekend, one midweek dinner if my shifts allowed it, and alternating holidays. You can live through a lot and still be destroyed by the sound of your children buckling into another parent's car. That weekend was mine. I'd borrowed my Aunt Rhonda's weathered little cottage on Topsail Island, the one with the peeling seafoam shutters and the porch swing that groaned like an old woman sitting down. June and Micah loved it there because nobody cared about sand on the floor and the TV barely worked. We'd spent the day walking the beach, finding broken shells, and daring each other into the cold March water until Micah shrieked like the Atlantic had personally offended him. For once, my children were loose. For once, I didn't feel timed. I was stirring macaroni with one hand and slicing tomatoes with the other when my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the image preview. I wiped my fingers on a dish towel and opened it. It was a table setting. Long white tablecloth, candlelight, expensive flatware. 4 cream-colored place cards in elegant black script. Owen Whitaker, Dr. Claire Sutter, June Whitaker, Micah Whitaker. No text, just that photograph. For a second, I genuinely thought I might faint, because I knew that name. Claire Sutter had been the family therapist assigned during the worst part of the divorce. Not my therapist, not Owen's. Supposedly neutral, supposedly there for co-parenting transition support, and to help the children adjust. She had a calm voice, pearl stud earrings, and a way of looking at me that made me feel like I was being gently wrapped in gauze before being buried alive. At the hearing, her written recommendation had been one of the things Owen's attorney leaned on hardest. Given Ms. Monroe's unresolved grief and emotional volatility, continuity of environment is strongly advised. Emotional volatility. That phrase had followed me for 2 years like a stain. My phone rang before I could finish spiraling. Owen. I stared at his name until it nearly stopped. Then I answered. "Hey," I said. His tone was overly casual, which usually meant he was lying. Hey, you got a minute? I looked through the screen door. June was crouched beside Micah, helping him trap the crab in a plastic bucket. Their heads were close together. My whole heart was out there on those porch steps. What's going on? He exhaled. I wanted to ask you something, and before you get defensive, I'm just asking. That put my back up immediately. Asking what? He lowered his voice, and suddenly he sounded tender. That used to work on me when we were married. It didn't anymore. My mom's had kind of an emotional day. She misses the kids. I've had a rough one too, honestly. We were wondering if maybe you'd consider bringing them back tonight instead of Monday morning. I said nothing. He kept going. They can still come back to you next weekend for extra time. We'll figure something out. I looked down at the photograph still open on my phone. Dr. Claire Sutter. 2 empty chairs waiting for my children. What happened today? I asked. A pause. Tiny. Measurable. Nothing happened. It's just one of those days. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because there are moments when the truth is so close to your face that your body panics and mistakes it for absurdity. Are the kids asking to come home? I asked. Another pause. Well, June said she missed Daisy. Daisy was their golden retriever. June loved that dog, but she was not giving up a beach weekend to go smell a dog. Then June can miss Daisy until Monday, I said. His voice hardened half a degree. Sadie. No. Don't make this into something ugly. That line. That always. As if ugliness came from my refusal, not his request. I lowered the burner under the pasta. This is my weekend. You don't own them. And you don't get to borrow them when it's convenient. From outside, Micah shouted, Mom, it escaped! I heard Owen breathe through his nose. Put June on, he said. No. Sadie, for God's sake, you can call them before bed. That's it. Then I hung up. My hands were shaking. I wish I could say I immediately became the strongest version of myself. I didn't. I stood there in Aunt Rhonda's tiny kitchen, staring at my reflection in the black microwave door, feeling that old courtroom nausea climb my throat. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe Claire was speaking at some event. Maybe it wasn't the same Claire. Maybe there were 100 explanations that didn't make me feel like I'd been quietly robbed in broad daylight. Then June came in. She had wet cuffs on her jeans and a strand of hair stuck to her cheek. Dad called me earlier, she said, opening the fridge like she'd asked for nothing bigger than ketchup. I turned. When? Before dinner, while you were outside shaking out the towels. My skin went cold. Why didn't you tell me? She shrugged, too grown for 10. He said not to make it a thing. What did he say? She reached for shredded cheese, just that plans might change, and I should keep the navy dress Grandma bought me clean. I stared at her. The navy dress? I repeated. June nodded toward the hallway. It's in the garment bag. I didn't remember any garment bag. Apparently, there was one tucked beside Micah's duffel, and when I unzipped it later that night after the kids fell asleep, I found a pressed little suit for Micah, a ribboned dress for June, and a shoebox with 2 tiny corsages wrapped in tissue paper. At the bottom was a folded card from Owen's mother, Patricia. For our beautiful ones. Grandma can't wait to see your sweet faces tomorrow. Tomorrow. Not maybe, not if, tomorrow. I sat down on the bedroom floor so hard my hip hit the bed frame. For a long time, I just listened to the house. The old rattle of the window unit, the ocean somewhere beyond the dunes. Micah's small, congested sleep through the cracked door. Then my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. This time it was text. You deserve the whole truth. He's getting married at noon tomorrow. He wanted the kids there for photos before telling you. Claire is the bride. Under that came another message. Don't respond. Check your email. I was breathing too fast by then. My chest felt packed with glass. There, in my inbox spam folder, was a forwarded PDF confirmation for a wedding venue downtown. Saturday booking, intimate family ceremony, floral package upgraded, junior attendant seating reserved, bride, Claire Sutter, groom, Owen Whitaker. I read it 3 times, then a fourth. The cruelty of it wasn't just that he was remarrying. He had every right to move on. We were divorced. What gutted me was the shape of the lie. He had planned to take my children from my custody weekend so they could stand in photographs beside the woman who had helped label me unfit. And he wasn't even going to tell me first. He was going to unveil it afterward, once the pictures existed and the children had already been folded into the narrative. Look, everyone's happy. Look how stable this is. Look how unreasonable Sadie will seem if she objects now. I didn't sleep much that night. At 7:11 the next morning, the unknown number called. I took it outside, wrapped in Aunt Rhonda's old cardigan, with the sky still pearl gray over the water. "Who is this?" I asked. A woman answered in a whisper. "It's Piper." I knew the voice then, Owen's younger sister. Piper had always been the odd one in that family, too blunt, too restless. The only Whitaker who ever looked embarrassed by Whitaker behavior. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Because I'm tired," she said. "And because if I don't tell you now, they'll do to your kids what they did to you." I gripped the railing so hard my fingers ached. She told me Owen and Claire had been involved for more than a year. Not publicly, not officially, quietly, while Claire was still writing recommendations. While I was still being told to trust the process. While Patricia Whitaker sat in my living room after sessions, patting my knee and saying, "These transitions are so hard, honey," as if she weren't privately helping build the knife. "They started before the custody ruling," Piper said. "I don't know exactly when, but I saw messages. Mom knew. Dad knew. They said it would be smarter if Owen waited to make it public until everything was settled." My mouth went dry. "You're saying the woman who helped decide how much time I got with my children was sleeping with their father?" Piper was quiet for a beat. "I'm saying it wasn't an accident." The ocean wind lifted my hair off my neck. "Why now?" "Because he filed for a custody review last month." My stomach dropped. I hadn't known that. "He's going to argue your work schedule is still unstable," Piper said. "Claire's been helping him prep the household narrative. Married, calm, structured, healthy female presence. The whole thing." For a second, I couldn't hear anything but blood. That was the family secret. Not just a betrayal, a design. They hadn't simply won once. They were preparing to win again. And my children were supposed to smile in the photographs that would help them do it. I went inside and made pancakes because Micah woke up hungry, and children do not stop needing breakfast because their mother's world has just been set on fire. That might be the cruelest thing about motherhood. Catastrophe still has to wait while you butter toast. June watched me carefully that morning. She had my face, Owen's coloring, and a mind too old for her years. "Are we going somewhere fancy?" she asked finally. "No." She nodded like she already knew. "Is Dad mad?" "Probably." She poked her pancake with a fork. "Grandma said if we looked nice today, it would help everybody calm down." I set my coffee down. Did she say why people needed calming down? June's eyes flicked to Micah. He was humming at his syrup. Then she looked back at me and said very softly, "Because Dad says you make things harder when you feel replaced." I think something in me tore then. Not loudly, just enough to bleed. I stood up and walked to the sink because I was not going to shatter at the table. Behind me, I heard June get down from her chair. A second later, her arms wrapped carefully around my waist. "I didn't believe him," she whispered. That was almost worse. I turned and held her face in both hands. You never have to carry grown-up lies for other people. Do you understand me? She nodded, eyes already filling. Micah looked up, confused. Why's everybody sad? Because, I said, swallowing hard, some adults don't know how to tell the truth the first time. At 10:03, Owen pulled into Aunt Rhonda's gravel drive in his silver SUV. Of course he came himself. Patricia was in the passenger seat, in a cream blouse and sunglasses big enough to hide behind. Neither of them got out right away. They sat there as if maybe they could still rehearse the moment into control. I stepped onto the porch before they reached the steps. The kids were inside with cartoons turned loud. Owen took one look at my face and knew. Who told you? He asked. I laughed once, empty. That's your first line? Patricia climbed out more slowly. Sadie, let's not do this in front of the children. The children you plan to dress up and parade into your son's wedding without telling their mother? Patricia flinched, but only because I'd said it plain. Owen's jaw locked. I was going to tell you. When? After the photos were framed? It's not like that. No? I took a step down. Then tell me when your relationship with Claire started. He glanced at Patricia. Big mistake. That told me everything. Sadie, Patricia said, lifting one manicured hand, you are emotional right now. I laughed again, harsher this time. There it is, your favorite word. Don't speak to my mother like that, Owen snapped. Don't you dare tell me how to speak after what you did. His face changed then, just for a second, into the cold version of him I used to see only in private, the one nobody else believed existed. We're not discussing adult matters on a porch, he said. Send the kids out. No. They're in the wedding. No, they were in your strategy. Patricia took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were sharp and furious now. Those children deserve stability, and Claire can give them... I went so still she stopped speaking. Finish that sentence, I said. Neither of them moved. Finish it. Tell me what exactly the woman who wrote me off as emotionally volatile can give my children that their mother can't. No one answered. From inside, I heard Micah laugh at the cartoon. I thought of him in a little suit. June in navy blue. My children polished and arranged so that a lie could look wholesome in natural light. Tears burned unexpectedly. I hated that they saw them. Owen softened his voice. Dangerous, that softness. Sadie, the kids love Claire. I stared at him. Of course they do, I said. You introduced her after she was done helping you take them. That landed. Patricia inhaled sharply. Owen's face went flat. So it was true enough to hurt. He looked up at me and said the ugliest thing he could find. Maybe if you had held it together after Eli died, none of this would have been necessary. I swear the whole world narrowed to a pin. Not because it surprised me, because it had been inside him all along. For one wild second, I wanted to slap him, scream, throw the flower box off the porch and watch dirt explode over his loafers. Instead, I said, very quietly, get off my aunt's property. Patricia tried once more. You can't keep them from their father. No, I said, but I can keep them from your performance. Owen stood there another moment, breathing hard. Then June appeared behind the screen door. Nobody had heard her. She looked from me to her father to the garment bag I dragged out onto the porch as evidence. Her chin trembled once, and then she asked him the question that finished whatever kindness I still had left. Were you going to marry her before telling Mom? Owen swallowed. June, sweetheart. She stepped back from the door like he had reached for fire. That was the end of it. He left furious. Patricia left offended. Their tires spit gravel all the way back to the road. And the minute their car disappeared, I broke. Not elegant crying, not movie crying. I folded in half on the porch and sobbed so hard my throat felt skinned raw. June came to me first, then Micah, scared because he hated seeing anyone cry. He climbed into my lap like he was still 3 and pressed his hot little face into my shoulder. "I thought weddings were happy," he mumbled. I held both my children and stared at the strip of gray ocean beyond the dune grass. "So did I," said. That afternoon, I drove them to the aquarium in Surf City because I needed them somewhere bright and innocent while I figured out how to become a person again. We watched jellyfish pulse like little ghosts in blue light. Micah pressed his palms to the glass at the shark tank. June stayed close to my side, not clinging exactly, just measuring me. In the parking lot afterward, she said, "Dad told me not to mention Claire because he wanted it to feel natural." I shut the minivan door slowly. "When did he tell you that?" "A while ago." She stared at the pavement. "He said grown-ups do surprises all the time." I crouched in front of her. "June, listen to me. A surprise is a puppy or a birthday trip or pancakes for dinner. A surprise is not asking a child to help hide something from her mother." Her eyes filled. "I know." "No," I said, brushing hair off her face. "You know now, and that matters." That night, after the kids were asleep in a tangle of sunburnt limbs and borrowed blankets, Piper came to the cottage. She parked without headlights and sat at Aunt Rhonda's kitchen table, twisting a ring around her finger until I thought she might split it. "I shouldn't have waited this long," she said. Then she handed me a manila envelope. Inside were copies of venue invoices, email threads, and a printed calendar screenshot showing dinner reservations between Owen and Claire 6 weeks before the custody recommendation was filed. There was also one thing that made me physically sit down: a photo. Owen and Claire outside a restaurant, his hand on the small of her back, time-stamped nearly 2 years earlier. While I was still attending joint co-parenting sessions, while she was still looking me in the eye and asking how I was sleeping. "How did you get this?" I asked. Piper's mouth tightened. "My mother leaves things on the family iPad because she assumes everyone is either loyal or stupid." I looked at the image again. There it was, the whole rotten architecture. Not bad timing, not healing, not fate. A campaign. "Why are you really helping me?" I asked. Piper stared out the window into the dark. "Because my mother taught all of us that image matters more than truth, and I'm tired of being one more branch on that tree." I believed her. Monday morning, I drove the kids back to Owen's house myself. I dressed carefully. Cream sweater, hair pulled back, no trembling visible from the outside. Patricia opened the door before Owen could. Her face took in my expression and tightened. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "For once," she muttered. I smiled at her then, which unsettled her more than anger would have. The children went inside. Owen stepped into the foyer, tie loosened, eyes shadowed. He looked like a man whose wedding had happened anyway, but not the way he imagined. I later learned Claire was furious the kids weren't there, and half the family spent cocktail hour whispering about why. Good. I handed him a large envelope. "What's this?" "Copies," I said. "My attorney has the originals." He stared at me. For the first time since our divorce, he looked unsure. "You're bluffing." "No." I held his gaze. "And for the first time in a long time, Owen, I don't actually need you to believe me." Patricia stepped closer. "You would drag the children through a scandal because you're jealous?" I turned to her. "No," I said. "I'm dragging truth into a house that's been locked against it for years." Then I left before my knees could give out. The next month was lawyers, complaints, statements, sleeplessness, and the kind of adrenaline that feels almost holy when you've spent too long being dismissed. Claire resigned from her practice before the licensing board could formally suspend her. Owen's attorney tried to frame it as an innocent personal relationship that began after professional involvement ended. The dates said otherwise. Piper gave a statement. Two former clients came forward quietly after hearing whispers. It wasn't just my story anymore, and that broke something open in me I hadn't known was still capable of breaking. Because vengeance sounds glamorous until you're living inside it. Mostly, it's paperwork and headaches and crying in your car behind a pharmacy because you just heard your daughter say, "I don't want to make Dad mad," like she's already learned to arrange herself around male disappointment. One night, right in the middle of it all, I sat on my kitchen floor with a bag of frozen peas against my eyes and finally said out loud to the empty room, "I am so tired." Not of fighting, of having to prove I was worth less than what had been done to me. That was the collapse. Not the porch, not the wedding, that kitchen floor. Because anger can carry you only so far before grief sits down beside it. A week later, June asked if she could sleep at my place on a school night, even though it wasn't in the agreement yet. When I said yes, too quickly, she crawled into the twin bed I'd kept ready for years and whispered into the dark, "I like it here because nobody is pretending." I turned toward the wall so she wouldn't hear me crying. The temporary hearing came in early June. No dramatic gasps, no winning speech. Real life rarely gives you that. But the judge reviewed the conflict, the ethics violations, the timeline, and the concealed relationship. By the end of the afternoon, my parenting time was expanded immediately, pending a full custody modification. Half the week. Every other weekend no longer belonged to my survival. I walked out of the courthouse feeling lightheaded, not triumphant, just strangely quiet, like my body didn't yet trust that relief could be real. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Claire. I almost deleted it without opening, but I didn't. It read, "I'm leaving him. That doesn't fix anything, I know that. But I wanted you to know he told me if he couldn't control the story, he'd control the children. Be careful." No apology, no redemption speech, just one more ugly truth dropped in my hands. I stood on the courthouse steps with the June heat pressing damp against my neck and realized the fight wasn't over. It had simply changed shape again. That evening, I picked up June and Micah for my first expanded weeknight. We got takeout chicken, planted basil in chipped pots on the back steps, and watched a storm roll in across the neighborhood. Micah fell asleep with barbecue sauce on his cheek. June sat beside me on the porch swing while thunder moved low over the roofs. After a long silence, she leaned her head on my shoulder and asked, "Do people always turn mean when they're scared?" I thought about Owen, Patricia, Claire, even myself in certain moments. "Not always," I said. "But if they keep choosing it, eventually it becomes who they are." She was quiet for a minute. "Are we okay now?" I looked at the rain starting beyond the fence line. I could have lied, said yes, wrapped us in a clean ending like a blanket. Instead, I told her the truth. We're safer now, and we're telling the truth now. Sometimes that's the beginning of okay. She seemed to think about that. Then she nodded. When I tucked her in later, she handed me something she'd pulled from the side pocket of her old overnight bag. A folded cocktail napkin from the wedding venue, bent at the corners from being hidden too long. On the back, in Patricia Whitaker's handwriting, were 6 words. "Keep June close. She remembers more." I stared at it until the room went cold. June watched my face carefully. Grandma wrote that after I asked why Claire already had a drawer in Dad's bathroom. I sat down on the edge of the bed. "What else do you remember?" She swallowed. "A lot." And just like that, with rain tapping the windows and my daughter's small hand sliding into mine, I understood the truth hadn't finished arriving. Not even close.